I want to know that has it happened till now that you haven't tried communicating with water, but you suddenly came across water trying to communicate to you?
I'd say that the last 3 years have been like that for me, which is why I always like this concept of Radha and Krishna. Krishna talks about Radha as being the personification of his soul, and that there
Hmm.
is this unique and beautiful relationship of masculine and feminine,
Hmm.
which moves and flows and dances together. I mean, I had no real point of wanting to chat with you other than I just think it's nice to connect and
Yeah, yeah, for
I
sure, for sure. I actually, sorry, go ahead.
Well, because it's nice to have you as a friend as well, and I really like you a lot, and I respect you a lot.
Thank you so much. And it's 100% the same. I wanted to actually ask you that I know that most of the experiments that you do with water is where you either put out an intention or you ask something of it. I want to know that has it happened till now that you haven't tried communicating with water, but you suddenly came across water trying to communicate to you, or water trying to send some sort of guidance overall, not necessarily guidance, even just if it's, I don't know, banter, or I don't know what, like, it doesn't matter what it's saying, but anything which was unprovoked but coming towards you. Was there anything like this?
I'd say that the last 3 years have been like that for me. I virtually never ask water to show me anything anymore. I'm much more interested in what it wants to show me, and what
Hmm.
I see are often things that are about to happen. Images which I don't recognize in that moment, and then something will happen where it's like, oh, I've just seen that, where I put
Wow.
my thumb in the water and it showed the nail, but there was a chip in the nail, and 3 hours later I chipped my nail in exactly the same place. Lots of little things like that. Or one time I saw this obelisk shape, and there was no obelisk shape around me. I wasn't thinking of that. I wasn't thinking anything particularly. And then my friend came later, and she had been to a crystal shop and she'd bought an obelisk shaped crystal. And she
Hmm.
said, oh, you've seen anything like this? And I'm like, well, have a look at this ice crystal because it looks just like that.
Hmm.
So I see lots of things, but also I'll see even words in different languages show up. And one of them was, I mean, this was a different situation, but I was using, uh, I was talking about, someone had asked me to use the word Yeshua. And
Hmm.
so after using that, there was this chalice that appeared, and then there was something that looked like writing. And I was like, oh, that looks really like a language.
Hmm.
And so I put it on social media, and I had over 1,000 people respond saying that that was Hebrew for Yeshua.
Hmm.
It blew me away.
Hmm.
Then there was one so the answer to that question is absolutely yes. I see it all the time, and I encourage it because I'm more interested in what water will share with me. I
Hmm.
don't need to see it being showing me that it can see the cup or the face or I know I have thousands of photos to see that.
Hmm.
I'm like, the relationship has deepened
Hmm.
to the point where I want to learn more of its depth
Hmm.
of I was going to say of thinking, but of being. I want to feel water from a different perspective,
Hmm.
and that
Hmm.
as a relational based um, passion, I suppose, or relationship.
Hmm.
In the Vedas, they talk about these different relationships people can have with
Hmm.
God based on different relationships in the world. Like you can have a servant king kind of like, he's on a throne there somehow, but we're related in some way. And then you can have like the servant master relationship. So you're closer, you get to be with the person, you fold the clothes, you know more about them. Not that I like that relation. That's not the relationship I would encourage, but still it's an analogy within the
Hmm.
Vedas. And
Hmm.
then a friend where you don't recognize one to be any different from the other. And
Hmm.
then there is the parent child where the child is like your love, everything. And
Hmm.
then there is lover beloved. It says that within lover beloved, all relations can come.
Hmm.
And there's a bit of all of them in there. But the lover beloved, which is why I always like this concept of Radha and Krishna, and
Hmm.
how Krishna talks about Radha as being the personification of his soul, and that there
Hmm.
is this unique and beautiful relationship of masculine and feminine,
Hmm.
which moves and flows and dances together. And within all of that, um, I think that there is this balance, and that's what where water for me is like this is always bringing things back into balance.
Hmm.
And I think it's important that balance because I can see how quickly things go out. People talk about water as feminine all the time, and I'm like, stop, please. They call it her, she, and I'm like,
Hmm.
well, I can appreciate that the flowiness, the fertility, I can appreciate that we associate that.
Hmm.
Actually, I think it's been said that water is only one part matter and all the rest part, which is a gigantic, like 99% part, is photons. So water is a container of light, and the only matter is the hydrogen and oxygen.
Hmm.
And so even the hydrogen is feminine in the mode of levity, but the large oxygen is masculine in the mode of gravity, and together they create balance and liquid water on Earth.
Hmm.
And I'm very interested in things that come together. So we're not saying it's just this way or it's this way. There's a divine union that happens to
Hmm.
create liquid water, which is
Hmm.
extremely special. And we only have these words that we know to communicate our, our observations.
Hmm.
Quite hard when actually there's so much more that we don't even have words for. And I can
Hmm.
feel that a lot of what you've been feeling of late, there aren't words for. So we just don't know what to say
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, but that thing is there. Like when you spoke about the obelisk and the chalice and stuff like that, even though they were, I'm not reducing the wondrousness of those events, but I'm saying even though they are singular to you and your life and your timeline, and not what are telling you something about the collective, or what are telling you something about the macrocosm in some way, which also 100% should happen, I hope, sooner or later, and you get blown away to ether literally with the kind of miraculous feeling that it'll bring about. But what I was saying was that how 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 have you personally how have you been coming to the conclusion that and I'm not contesting it, I'm interested in knowing, where you mentioned that um, water as spirit, as well as in this conversation itself where you mentioned about the water as God's vehicle or God's abode, something like that you had,
House of the divine.
house of the divine. Yeah. So can I know how, in your own eyes, like the water is different compared to the other elements, where you would choose that, or according to you, you would opine that you have come to understanding that water is the one which is the house of the divine, compared to,
Yeah.
let's say, ether or fire or earth and stuff like that?
Because I would suggest that the more you dive into water, the more you see that it encompasses all the elements, including fire.
Okay.
So when water burns, when there's a certain vapor stage that where it actually can burn at 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit and looks exactly like a flame. It's called flazer. So water can become fire. And then you look at the hydrogen aspect. Hydrogen literally means the creator of water, and the sun is a ball of hydrogen. And so the hydrogen, my friend thinks hydrogen is the spirit of water. I tend to lean towards it being condensed light. There's reasons for all of that, but water can be air. There's water all throughout the air.
Mm-hmm.
Water can be fire. very, very clear. I can show you a really amazing video. It's in my book too, of this guy that was working with this special state of water as a fire.
Mm,
Water is it's in the earth, it's on the earth, it's in every aspect of the life within earth.
mm,
And in ether too is an aspect of the plasma aspect of water. And earth, air, fire, and then obviously water is water. So you kind of start to look at the parts where even within the elements that we've separated, water is within them all, within all of them.
mm,
So when it comes to the spirit aspect, I suppose, of it, because water has so many different stages and phases, and we've only identified four.
mm,
Mathematically, as well as I've always said it, but I was speaking to Robert, who's like a polymath, and he said mathematically water must have more stages. And one of these stages, given how much water we are, I think is like some kind of vibrational vapor or in direct connection with the ether.
mm,
And I think that's where consciousness is within these phases.
mm,
More I speak to people that have near-death experiences. They have this sense of rising, which is what a gas does, and water can become a gas, can become a vapor, can become all these different things. Then they look upon their body and they look at their body as an observer with no attachment. And I think that one aspect of the spiritual aspects of water, and I think there are many, is that it is a witness or an observer. And within that, how can we observe ourselves through meditation, through out-of-body experiences, through astral travel, through dreams, and in near-death experiences? What is it that sees? And there was a study done on blind people, where someone who is born blind can only dream in senses like they experience in the world. So they don't dream in pictures, but they dream in the other senses. Someone who is blinded later, they dream in pictures because they've seen some of the world. But there was a study done on either, I can't remember if it was 17 or 21 people that were born blind, who had all had verifiable cases of near-death experiences where there have been people in the room that could say, yes, they said this when they came around. And many of those people were doctors in the hospital. So these people who were born blind, never seen the world, had a near-death experience, came back into their body and explained everything that they saw. They were able to explain what the doctors looked like, what the room looked like, what they saw in spirit, came back as blind, but began to dream in pictures from then on.
wow.
So their question is then, what is it that sees? And
Mm,
if eyes are the windows to the soul and tears are an expression of spirit, I do believe the most logical explanation as well for the way in which the soul, the spirit, the subtle body leaves the body or becomes an observer and goes on for other experiences, this consciousness leaves through the method of water, one method of water change that we may not be, we just don't see yet. But I
mm,
think just like we're discovering new things all the time, we will discover what that is a very real phase, and we may be able to even see it as it
mm,
transpires and as it's been described in many different ways throughout time. And many people that see spirit as in leaving, they talk about it like some kind of vapor.
mm,
So this is an interesting aspect. But when I think about this house of the divine, I I think about like if we are like a container, this container, the skin container that we are,
mm,
then what is it containing? So it's like if the Holy Grail was water, what it would be containing would be light. And I think that this aspect of water and light being a container of light is one of the reasons that I think that the way I say that water is the house of the divine. It because when water is beginning to freeze, but before it's completely made all the patterns, I can film and photograph light coming out of the tip of the ice just as it's forming. And it looks like a halo. And I think it's light that paves the way for the design of the imagery. So I
Wow.
think this light part is a very, very important
You,
and
you're
the
saying
significant.
you're saying if you come to the eye level of the water surface and then try to photograph it, like on just on top of the surface of the water, you can see the haloish effect.
Yeah, I'm going to show you what it looks like. It's in here.
Oh.
Um, then yeah, this is from in the freezer. See the light coming out?
Hmm. 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 Okay.
So I genuinely think that it is light that illuminates the path forward. So one of the reasons I say that, and there's many, is that water seems to be a container of light. And it's light that comes out to create, and it's water that kind of follows and contains it along the way. It has to go where light goes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that the where we put our conscious expression is also where we put our light.
Hmm.
So this information exchange, which is described in the book, I think is through light, but we don't see that water is like mostly photons, mostly light.
Hmm.
We we see it the way we've been told to see it,
Hmm.
but not necessarily the way that it is.
But
And
but
just like us.
but would you go as far to say that for you, like there's no difference between light and water, like they're basically one?
I think that they're so intimately intertwined that
Hmm.
they work as one.
Hmm. Because the way it is resonating with me right now is that um, if we bring it to the truism that we exist like in a dualistic universe, basically, where it's light and day and sorry, light and dark, and zero and infinity, blah blah blah, and everything is animating itself via the methodology of something to be perceived and then a perceiver.
Mhm.
So I had this conversation once, which is there on my Spotify, where even mine and yours is there, with the Vic Dikara, another astrologer, and he had explained something to me about the Prakriti and Purush principles when it comes to the masculine and the feminine, and then combined with some other studies which I was doing later, they kind of built an understanding into me that um, is kind of resonating to me over here, where let's say water is the field of creativity, water
Mhm.
is the field which will give shape, etc., etc., etc. But that field gets direction and dynamized by light, which could be fire in terms of the masculine principle, or basically the god principle, such as the light coming from the sun, which is the actual carrier of life
Mhm.
in terms of the photons and stuff like that. If we want to bring it down to this thing, to the point where actually right now, with the sun raining down upon us, to use a watery phrase, these solar flares, which are leading to literally DNA changes within us, and it's sending these new neutrinos of information, light, etc., all of this stuff. I won't be surprised if 100% the relationship is so intimate, like one can't exist without the other, like Shiva and Shakti, that we would see them all the time together. But what's interesting to me, especially from that photo, is let's say when there was a leaf and the halo was around the leaf, that the light uh, paved the way, like again a penis, like it went out in terms of being masculine into
Mhm.
the field to dynamize it, show
And
it
it's a
where,
really interesting concept. Yeah, I can
like,
appreciate.
yeah, like where it can go, and then the water giving the shape to it and actually bringing the life behind you know
I
so
love that concept. It's a really interesting concept. I really like that.
yeah, to me it hit me like that. So,
I've been thinking there's got to be more to think about, more to, that'll come with that idea, with
hmm,
that concept, that I see this light coming out of the ice. And
hmm,
it's there's that explains it so beautifully, really, in this creation process.
hmm. It's like continuous conception happening, spontaneously, in real time. And again, actually, we can put it in the example of even, let's say, our body and eyes are functioning because light is falling on the screen behind, which is the retina. But basically, we exist, let's say, in a field of creation, like there is, trees and buildings and blah 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 blah. But we would not be able to perceive if the light did not come through to illuminate that, dynamize that, give us the current frame of reference. All right, like where we are right now on the planet, or in the society, or in the local aspect, what my local space is, basically. So the light would, because we again are not, I don't mean to say this literally in a limiting way, but we are not like endless bodies of water, right? Like we are in our own vessel, and we have a
Mhm.
certain amount which we have been given the sense, by nature, to be able to govern and actually use. That much force also we are able to, exert with this water body via the light coming through. Because let's say if the sun didn't come out for a few days, basically, like all of us are going to go dark and, depressed and blah 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 blah. But basically, that everything I'm seeing outside is basically light, which is allowing this water body to be able to see it, and then for me to interact with it, you know.